Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining us this evening. We are going to start in about 3 minutes. In the meantime, we just want to make sure that you can hear us, that you also can see us. So thanks very much for joining us a little bit early. We are also going to ask you a couple of questions just because we really want to find out where you are in this process so that we'll know how to best help you. I am going to put this quick questionnaire here on the screen, and you can answer just by choosing an answer in this little poll. So then we can also know that you can hear us well. Okay, let me know if you can see my screen as well. That would be appreciated. And I'm going to just turn on the poll right now. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to start in just a minute. So if you're still answering that poll, you can make a choice right now. I am going to close this in about 45 seconds, and then we're going to start. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to now close the poll, and we're going to start. So welcome to our GMAT Math Refresher. I'm so happy you're here today. Now, I know you're sitting at home and you're probably thinking, well, what am I doing here? I mean, what am I doing here at home, or what am I doing here at the webinar? What is it that I've gotten myself into? There's so many of these webinars available right now. Is this going to be something valuable or not? I don't know. Well, I want to make sure that it is. And I really feel for you. We all affected by what's going on around us. In fact, we've just gotten a brand new office here in downtown Toronto. We've just renovated it. We were ready to welcome our students there. We have another location, so we've added one more. And we weren't really able to use it. We've just done a demo class, and that's it. So everybody's been affected by this, but we're trying to make the best out of it. This gives us an opportunity to connect online and learn online. There are a lot of things you can do online with your time. You can be watching Netflix, or you could be upgrading your skills. So I really want to congratulate you on choosing to upgrade your skills today. Now, I want to make sure that you get the most out of this class, and that's going to involve learning. Now, when you learn, in order for you to learn, you need to get a little outside of your comfort zone. You may have heard of a concept of a comfort zone. Usually, watching Netflix is probably within a comfort zone. Coming to a class and trying some things and participating might be a little outside of a comfort zone, especially since I am going to be giving you some challenging questions. And I would expect some participation from you, because I have seen these questions many times. I want to make sure that you can do these questions if you see them on a test day. So I would really like to encourage you to participate, get a little outside of a comfort zone. And if you find yourself in what's called a panic zone, which is when you really don't know what to do, don't worry, try your best. We're going to break things down step by step. So how are we going to do this? We're going to be working on a few questions together. Of course, I'll also tell you what else we're going to be talking about here today, but I want to start by doing a question with you. This is going to be a question from an exam, from a GMAT exam. It is a problem-solving question. Here's how the question looks like. There's a question, there are 5 answer choices, 1 of them is right, and 4 of them are wrong. I'm going to ask you to try whatever you think is necessary. The only thing you cannot do is use a calculator. And then we're going to talk about the different ways of doing this question, because I really want to make sure that you take something away from this exercise. So I'll be quiet for about 20 seconds. I'll let you choose an answer. All right, well, thank you for voting. Almost all of you voted, which is amazing. If you haven't yet, choose an answer. I'm going to stop this in just 5 seconds. This is really going to be an interactive part of our discussion. I want to make sure that you do things all throughout this class. Well, let's see how you did. This is an anonymous poll, so you won't be able to see who answered what, but let me share the results with you. By the majority vote, about 2/3 of us voted for answer choice C, and then B and D, about 20%. Well, how can you do this question? This question is fairly simple. What you need to do for this question, of course, is know what is an exponent. Now, 1 to the power of 1 is simply 1. 2 to the power of 2 is 2 squared, which is 4, and 3 to the power of 3 is 27. Now, if you might have forgotten that 3 to the power of 3 is 27 and not 9, but if you did remember, if you add all of these numbers up, without the calculator, it's not super difficult. You would then get a number 32. Now, unfortunately, 32 is not among the answer choices, but don't worry. What you can do is you could either again remember what's an exponent and keep multiplying 2 onto itself until you get to that 32, or you could remember what is the power of 2 to the power of 5 if you learn your powers of 2. And then you will know that that's 32. So the answer is indeed C, 2 to the power of 5. Congratulations if you have gotten this right. Well, this is awesome. I really want to make sure that even the 2/3 of people who answered this question can learn something. Now, if you didn't get this question right, try to find where did things go wrong, and then you can learn from this experience. This is really important. Because if you say, okay, well, I got this right, this was just a stupid mistake, well, there is no such thing as a stupid mistake. There was a reason why you got this wrong. So find that reason, try to fix it. And if you got it right, congratulations. So let's do one more question, because I want to make sure that everybody can take something away from this. There's another question that looks almost exactly like the previous question, just the numbers are slightly different. I'm going to be quiet for about a minute, and then I'll ask you to share your answer. Oh, please remember, don't use a calculator. Okay, 10 more seconds to make a choice. All right, let me share with you what everybody has chosen. So as you could see, about half of the people chose D, and then B, C, and E. So we have a really good distribution. Now, I hope you didn't use a calculator, and fewer people answered this question compared to the previous question. So this looks like a more difficult question. Now, let me share with you some of the ways of how you could approach this question. First of all, this question looks exactly the same as the previous question. So technically, what you could do is simply do the same thing. You could calculate 14 to the power of 4, 15 to the 5, and 16 to the 6 by simply multiplying 14, 15, and 16 onto itself multiple times. Then, of course, you can add them up and get an answer. And the answer is indeed D. Now, you could do this. Of course, I hope you didn't do this, because the problem with this approach, unfortunately, is going to take an enormous amount of time. By the way, this is the approach that you will find as an explanation in the official guide. The explanations in the official guide aren't necessarily designed to show you how to do this question quicker. They're simply proving to you that the answer that you've gotten is the right answer mathematically. So that is indeed the right answer. However, on a test day, you definitely cannot do this. So what could we do on a test day? Well, we need to do something different. Let's call this way the strategy way. This is when you started to learn some shortcuts. You started to learn some different approaches to how to do questions. So let me share with you one of the ways to do this question, and that is going to be based on what's called the units digit strategy. So what is the units digit strategy? If you were to multiply, add, or even subtract two numbers, then the very first step would be to take the last digit, which is called the units digit, and subtract the number at the bottom from the number at the top. In this case, we're multiplying, so you'll multiply. If you're adding, you'll add. So if you are multiplying these two numbers, you're going to start by multiplying 6 by 7, which is going to be 42. Now, 4 is then going to get carried over to the next digit, to the 10th digit, but the 2 is going to stay there. And this is really what the strategy is all about. We are going to stop doing our calculations at this point and look at the answer choices. If we see only one answer choice that ends in a 2, we are done. We don't have to do anything else because this is going to be just a wasted effort. We know that the answer ends in a 2. Okay? So I hope this makes sense. This is what the essence of the units digit strategy is all about. Now, that strategy works for any addition and multiplication. Again, it works with subtraction with a caveat that sometimes you have to borrow. Here we're dealing with only multiplication and addition because exponents are actually multiplications. Let's start with 14. Now, 14 to the 4, that's essentially 14 multiplied onto itself 4 times. Let's start multiplying it maybe once and then twice and see where we can go from there. 14 to the power of 1, that is going to be 14. Now we can then keep going and multiply it by 14 again. So using the same units digit strategy, that would mean that a number that ends in a 4 will be multiplied by a number that ends in a 4. We only care about the last digit, don't really care about what's going with other digits. So 4 times 4, that's 16. The last digit is going to be 6. Now, if you know that 14 squared is 196, that's great. If you don't, that's completely okay. Let's keep going. 14 cubed, that's going to be that number that ends in a 6 multiplied by something that ends in a 4 again. So that's going to give us 24, 6 times 4. Again, we don't care about the 2, just care about the 4. So that's going to give us 4 at the end. Let's keep going. We have a number that ends in a 4. One more time, we multiply it by something that ends in a 4. We are going to get another 16 and another 6 at the end. So what we've done is notice how we are just starting to do our calculation. We're just doing a very, very simple multiplication. If you learned your times table up to 10, that's really all you need for this strategy. And what we've already recognized that 14 to the 4 ends in a 6. Let's keep going. 15 to the 5, what do you think it is going to end in? You can just put it in the chat box. 15 to the 5, what do you think? Okay, somebody said 4, somebody said 5. All right, if you said 5, you're absolutely right, because 15 to the power of anything is actually going to end in a 5. In fact, anything that ends in a 5 to the power of any integer is going to be 5, because 5 times 5 is 25, and then times 5, it's again 25. How about 6? What would 16 to the power of 6 end in? Okay, yeah, exactly. It is going to be 6. So 16, 6 times 6 is 36. Again, times 6 is 36. And it's always going to be 6 at the end. So what we've just found is that the first number ends in a 6, the second one in a 5, the third one in a 6. If we add all of them up, that strategy works for addition just as well as it works for multiplication. We will find that the last digit of that entire operation is going to be 7, because 6 plus 5 plus 6 is 17. Only one answer ends in a 7. This has to be the right answer. And of course, we can do this in 2 minutes or even less. So if you've used this strategy, please put it in the chat box. I'm really curious if this is what you've done. If you have gotten these questions right, which is about half of the people who have voted, I would probably imagine that you've used this strategy or some sort of a combination of this strategy. So if yes, then please put in the chat box, yes. Great, perfect. Okay, great. So you've probably been studying a little bit for the GMAT already. You've learned this strategy. Now, I want to give you a little bit of a challenge to think about. Well, with subtraction, it's the same idea. With the subtraction, you just need to borrow, but it works just as well. So what if this is the final question on your exam and you don't really have 2 minutes. You don't even maybe have a minute. And you literally just have 30 seconds and you gotta get this question right. So you could use the units digit strategy again, just a reminder, it works for multiplication, addition, and subtraction. You just have to borrow with subtraction. So you gotta be a little careful, but with addition, multiplication, it works really well and really easily. So what can you do if you just have 30 seconds left? You really need to start thinking about this question a little more critically, because you'll recognize that you cannot do all this math. So you gotta just maybe try to, maybe even try to guess, maybe just try to think a little outside of the box here. And one of the things that you can do is try to work with what the GMAT has given you. One of the things that the GMAT has given us is the answer choices. Now, many people, when they see a problem-solving question for the first time, will actually not look at the answer choices. So I'm curious if you have, because answer choices tell us a lot. One of the things they told us is that they are far apart from each other. What this means is that we could estimate the answer without calculating it. Because if we estimate an answer by doing a very rough calculation and we're off by, let's say, 1 million, that's a pretty big number to be off. But if we're off by that 1 million, we can still get the right answer because they're much farther apart. A is 700,000 and E is 180 million. So that strategy would work really well with one problem. C and D are very close. And there was probably a reason why the GMAT did this. Because if you estimate, and by the way, estimating this number wouldn't be that difficult because, of course, when you're dealing with exponents and when you understand the exponential growth, you realize that the only number you have to estimate here is 16 to the 6 because the other numbers are so much smaller. Now, if you estimate that number, you realize it's about 16 million, you'll still potentially be stuck between C and D. So the question is, how do you break the tie? Can anybody think of a way to break the tie between C and D? If I were to tell you, well, I'm pretty sure it's C or D because that's what the GMAT's trying to do to me, I'm not even going to estimate. I just know what the GMAT's doing. I understand how the GMAT thinks. So how would I now break the tie between C and D? What do you think? Any ideas? All right, well, let me share with you what you can do. You may have noticed, cannot end in a 6. Okay, then now we're getting back into our using that strategy. We're not using that strategy. We're actually just working with the answer choices that are left. Right, so we didn't have time to calculate. Instead, what we're going to do by recognizing that the two answer choices are close and they likely have to be the right answer, we're now just faced with the choice. Is it C or is it D? And how can we break the tie? By looking at these two answers and recognizing what's the difference between them. Well, the main difference is one of them is even and another one is odd. Now, if I look at the original question, I would notice that I have an even number plus an odd number plus another even number. If I add them up, the answer has to be odd. And of these two answers, D is odd and C is even. And I can literally do this in 30 seconds. Now, There's always a way to look for the ways to get to the answer quicker than doing the calculations. We'll actually get to this in a moment, but the GMAT will never make things so difficult so as requiring you to do long calculations. I know sometimes my hair, I don't have too much of it, but sometimes it just stands up when I look at the explanations on some of the websites and some of the forums where there's just like a long 2-page explanation, or sometimes when I look at the official guide and I see an explanation that takes 4 pages for one question, because there's absolutely no way you can do this on a test day. There's always going to be a way to find the shortcut. You just need to know where these shortcuts are and know how to use them. Now, what if you had 2 answer choices in a previous strategy that end in a 7? There'll still be a way to break the tie. There'll be some other way. Maybe there will be the estimation, the order of magnitude. Maybe one of them is going to be in the billions, another one in the hundred thousands. So there's always a way. If you ever think that there is no way, that you have to do the calculation, there's probably something you haven't seen yet or something you may have missed yet. All right, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you've learned something from this. We are going to do a few more questions, but I wanted to share with you what is it that we are actually getting ourselves into here today, and what are we going to cover? First of all, I really want to make sure that you also walk away with some bigger understanding about the GMAT. What everybody needs to know about the GMAT, what is that frequently overlooked step in the GMAT study plans? Because I know many of you are studying at home and you're wondering, what is the good plan for me? How would I actually structure my studies? So I'll share with you that very important, frequently overlooked steps. What are some of the important quant concepts? This is ultimately a math refresher class, so we'll be talking about the math concepts. But I also want to make sure that you get some strategies and not just the basic concepts. And these are the strategies you are going to be able to use right now. We'll talk, of course, about the resources so that you can study at home. And then at the end, we have a guest here joining us today from the John Molson School of Business at Concordia University in beautiful Montreal. Kumyo is going to share a few quick tips on how you can prepare a successful MBA application, as well as how is your application going to be potentially affected by what's going on around us right now. So we'll talk about this at the end. Please make sure that you stay, because these are the things you cannot find on a website. Now, let's talk about some of the important things about the GMAT. First of all, some of you mentioned that you're just beginning to study for the GMAT. So I want to make sure that we're all on the same page and we all understand what is the structure of the test. What's involved in the test? Well, there are 4 sections on the test. There's an essay, there's a section that's called integrated reasoning, which is essentially dealing with 12 very short business cases. Then there's a quant section and a verbal section. Rather, the quantitative reasoning section and the verbal reasoning section. That is a very important distinction. Most people miss that word reasoning. It's actually more important than the word quantitative or the word verbal. Now, today, of course, we'll spend our time talking about the quantitative section. We will have a separate workshop on a verbal reasoning section, and that is going to be in exactly 2 weeks, same time. I know some of you have already registered for it. If you haven't, we are going to make sure you get a link after the seminar to register for the verbal section. Now, I know you might be wondering, we're all sitting at home, so can I even take the GMAT right now? And the answer is yes, you absolutely can. If you want to take the GMAT, you absolutely can. You can do this online. Now, there is a difference between the regular GMAT and the online GMAT. Here's the difference. The regular GMAT exam is 3.5 hours long, but the online is a little shorter. It's 3 hours long. It's, of course, taken at home instead of a test center. It's still proctored, but remotely through a webcam. You're going to see, or the proctors are going to see you just like you see me right now. And everything that you do there at the exam is going to be recorded. This exam is actually a little more flexible than the regular exam because you can take it 24/7. Wouldn't it be nice to take the exam at 3 a.m. in the morning? If you are not a morning person, well, maybe you are a morning person, but a real early morning person, you can absolutely take this test at 3 a.m. With a regular exam, there are certain limitations of how often you can take this test, how many times you can take this test. There is a lifetime maximum of 8 times. I hope nobody's getting close to that limit because that would be real painful, especially because every time you take this test, it costs you 275 American dollars. The online exam, however, does not count towards those maximums because it can be taken only once. So there's just a once in a lifetime opportunity to take this test. Right now, it's available until June 15th only. It might be available afterwards, but that will all depend on the opening or the test centers. Right now, they're still closed in Canada, the United States, and in most countries in the world. The online GMAT exam is a little bit cheaper as well. It is $200 US. Now, the biggest difference between the online exam and the in-person exam is in the structure, aside, of course, from the format, you're taking it at home. Here are the 3 options in which you could take the regular exam. You could vary, you could choose the order of the sections, whichever one you prefer. However, at home, you will not have that choice. You will have to take a quantitative reasoning section first, then a verbal reasoning section. So you'll be working without a break for approximately 2 hours and 15 minutes, including the check-in process. Then you're going to have a 5-minute break and then the IR section, and then no essay. So this is great. If you're really worried about writing an essay, you're not going to have to do this at home. But of course, only one break and a shorter break. And with the check-in process, it is going to take approximately 3 hours. Now, if you're wondering what exactly to expect, we have done a webinar approximately 3 weeks ago where we went into a lot of detail about the online exam. If you haven't been there, then I would encourage you to watch a recording. We are going to share that recording with you. The most important thing that many people are really worried about when it comes to the online exam is the inability to use scratch paper. You are going to be given an online notepad that is going to look like this. And of course, it's a little unnatural to use the online whiteboard, especially since you are not given any sort of a stylus. You got to use your keyboard and a mouse. However, this is only a problem if you don't practice. Anything you want, you can get really good at if you practice. Many of our students who have already taken the online exam said it just took them a few days to get used to the online notepad, and they got pretty comfortable with it. So don't let this stop you if you really have to meet your deadlines. And of course, if you don't need to meet your deadlines for this year, then you can wait until the test centers reopen. Hopefully this will be done soon. Now, of course, you are going to be given a calculator, but I just want to remind you that the calculator is available on the IR section only. It is not available on your quant section, which is where, of course, all of us really want to have a calculator. But trust me, you don't need the calculator on the quant section because this is a really basic calculator and it's not going to be super helpful anyway for most of the questions. Now, I want to ask you a question since we're talking about math. Is the GMAT math hard? What do you think? Is it hard? I don't know. I'd like to ask you whether you think it's hard. And let me ask you that question. And I want to know what you think. I might think it's hard, or might think it's easy. There might be different reasons why I might think it's hard, or why I might think it's easy. So I'd like to know what you think. I'll just give you about 20 seconds to choose an answer, and then we'll continue. Just 10 more seconds. Thanks so much for voting. All right, so here's what you've answered. Most of you said, first of all, it's been a while since you've done this kind of math. And the biggest answer was there's a time pressure. There's very little time per question. And that is why, of course, when you are trying to read the explanation from the books and trying to understand how the books would explain that you do this question, you realize that is not really something that you can do in a real test. This is interesting. It's certainly interesting to hear how the books explain the questions, but it's not very practical. So let's talk about these strategies. But before we do that, I just want to really quickly introduce myself. I almost forgot that. You might be wondering, who is this guy with a funny accent? So I am a GMAT instructor. I work for GMAT Master, and I have 3 university degrees. I have a Bachelor of Physics, a Master of Mathematics. I also do have an MBA. So how I got into teaching the GMAT, I scored myself 750 on the GMAT. So at the time when I took that test, it was the top 1%. And I've been teaching the GMAT now for 10 years, since actually late 2009. Now, I think the GMAT is a very interesting challenge. Even though I've been doing this for 10 years, I still keep learning about the GMAT, and I love these skills-based challenges. I also do have hobbies outside of the GMAT. Believe it or not, GMAT is my hobby. In the winter, I love snowboarding. In the summer, I love sailing. I can't really do either of them right now because our sailing club is closed and the winter is, well, almost over. We have had snow yesterday in Toronto. And yes, the GMAT is also the challenge that I love. I do work with people whom I consider much smarter than me. I always learn, and this is really, and every time I even come to these seminars, I learn something from you, from your answers. But many of the people who contributed to this seminar that I consider much smarter than me have a lot more experience than I do. And if you combine the years of experience of a few of our instructors who contributed to this workshop, among them, we have more than 70 years. In fact, one of us had 21 years teaching the GMAT, another person who works for us, 18 years teaching the GMAT. So lots and lots of time, lots and lots of experience. Now, I also wanted to show you my, and that's what I'm going to be sharing with you today. I wanted to share with you really quickly my score report on the GMAT, just so that you also know that everything is legit. And I'm also showing this to you, not to impress you, it impresses me. Every time I look at my report, I say, oh, this was really cool. I was able to pull that off. Now, I've used this, of course, not necessarily to become a GMAT instructor, but to do my MBA. I did graduate from a business school here in Toronto. And I worked for a very large company for about 10 years. I worked a lot with numbers. I worked in finance, and I realized I'm kind of a little tired of working with numbers. I really like working with people. So I'm officially retired. This is my idea of retirement. Oops, a wrong picture. Yes, that's the right picture. So that's my idea of retirement. So I am officially retired right now. I can finally do what I really love to do. And how I got there? Because of my MBA, right? So the MBA can really help you do what you really absolutely love to do. If you're thinking of switching your career or growing your career or simply making more money, MBA can help you get there. Of course, MBA is not for everyone, but for most people who are very determined, MBA can absolutely help you get there. Now, of course, you didn't come here to learn about me. You're probably thinking, well, that's really great, but can I get a score of 700 or more? And most importantly, how do I do this? Well, let me share with you something important about the GMAT, and that is directly from the GMAC, from the organization that creates the test. Now, this organization has a special conference for organizations like ours, where they invite some of the top test prep organizations from in this specific conference from North and South America. So about 6 or 7 test prep organizations, and we're one of them, where the GMAT invites us every year to share some ideas, to share a little more about the GMAT, and to also hear what we see among our students, some of the challenges that they're facing. Now, here's directly from what the GMAT shared with us. What you need to know for the GMAT is not more than what is generally taught in secondary school classes. You may have heard that the GMAT has high school math. I know some of the practice tests that you might find online and some of the free forums have topics that don't even appear in the GMAT, like trigonometry or some logarithms. That does not appear. In fact, most of the online questions that you're going to find on these free forums, unless they are real questions, many of them are trying to make questions difficult by introducing some difficult math concepts. That is not really how the GMAT works. So the math there is not from university level, it's not even from high school, it is really all from secondary school. And what you need to know, some arithmetic, some elementary algebra, some commonly known geometry concepts. Again, this is directly swiped from the GMAT presentation, and some basic structures of the English language. So let me ask you a question. We've all graduated from secondary school. Well, I would only imagine if you're thinking of going to a graduate school, you probably graduated from a secondary school at some point. May have been a while ago. Some of you said it's been a while since you've done this kind of math, but you have done it. So why is the GMAT then difficult? Why is it a challenging test, and why so many people don't do well in this test? Well, because we have been trained and conditioned to study a certain way. In fact, many of us believe that knowledge is power. Because when we went to school, we were told by our teachers that knowledge is power. So if we learn something from that class, we are going to be powerful, we are going to be more successful in class. I know I certainly heard this a lot from my teachers. You may have as well. Many of these things I don't remember anymore. I'll be honest with you, I gotta admit, whatever I learned in my chemistry class and many of the stuff in my history class, I don't remember at all. One of the classes I benefited from a lot was my math class, because my teacher was just a really, really gifted person. He taught us a lot of these out-of-the-box thinking. And that's why the GMAT for me was not that hard, because I had a lot of these skills. So when you're thinking of the GMAT, it's not just going to be about knowing the concepts, right? Because everybody learned the concepts at some point. But knowing the concepts is kind of like saying, if I want to drive a car, maybe a really fast one, maybe like a Formula One car, that's really my dream. Go on the racetrack, drive a Formula One car. Can I do that by simply reading a driver's handbook? Honestly, I absolutely can't. I need to have the skills. I got the knowledge, I got the formulas, I got the concepts, but I haven't mastered that process. And that's really what the GMAT is going to be about. In fact, again, let's go back and ask the GMAT. Another quote from the GMAT. Rather than testing your knowledge, see, again, the GMAT tells us this is not going to be about knowing formulas. It's not going to be about knowing business. And if we talk about the verbal section, it's not going to be about knowing molecular biology, even though you might see questions on that. Instead, the GMAT exam measures higher order reasoning skills. Notice how, you remember when I showed you the structure of the test, that it's a quantitative reasoning and verbal reasoning. It's really all about reasoning. You would notice as we do more questions today, you will start really getting maybe a better grasp of these reasoning processes. And you'll realize that the GMAT is manageable because the reasoning skills are the skills you use every day. You just have to learn how to apply them for the GMAT. So anybody can do well if you learn how to, right? And again, this was a quote from the GMAT. So there is hope. And we'll talk exactly about the steps that we need to do. And by the way, there was that missing step for most people between actually the knowledge and the mastery of the skills. And I'll share you what that missing step is. So as you are sitting at home, as you are studying for the GMAT, you know exactly what to do to get to that score, whichever score you want. As long as it's not above 800, you can get that score. Now, I want to begin by talking about the basic concepts, and then we'll build on them, because anything you want to master, you got to start somewhere. You may have heard, if you want to learn how to run, first learn how to walk. That's absolutely true here as well. So let's learn these basic concepts, these theory concepts that are really important. Now, the way that we're going to talk about them here today may not necessarily have been the way that you've learned them in school. But we'll talk about what's really important and applicable for the GMAT. Because if you're thinking, okay, maybe I'm going to go back to my secondary school, it's been 4 or 5 years in different countries. Do I have to really learn the whole thing for 6 years? Or maybe can I learn it much faster? Or what actually do I need to learn? So let's talk about that. What we're going to talk about now is actually the most commonly tested concept on the GMAT, and that is properties of numbers. So what are properties of numbers? These are how the numbers work, how the numbers could be put together, how the numbers could be used in different operations, and what happens when we actually start using numbers. By the way, we do have different kinds of numbers. In fact, even on the GMAT, you're going to see different kinds of numbers. People started using numbers a very long time ago, and the numbers that people used in caves were actually these numbers. There were just one stick for one number, and that's it. That's what we needed to count. Now, when we started counting bigger numbers, then we needed to come up with some shortcuts. Ancient Romans did that. They came up with these shortcuts. They just said, instead of writing 10 sticks, I'm just going to write a letter X, and that's going to denote 10. I can add or subtract, and that's how I can quickly write bigger numbers. Now, there is also some limitations. If you want to write numbers in the millions or billions, it is going to be really hard to do. So that is why, at some point, an Italian, Fibonacci, introduced to Europe what's called the Arabic numbers. Now, they called Arabic not actually because they came from Arabia. They did to Europe, but they originated in India. And these are the numbers that look like this. These are numbers we use every day. What was interesting about these numbers, for the first time in the human history in Europe, people started using zero. There was actually no zero in the Roman numeral numbers, interestingly. I don't know if you ever thought about this. And also, for the very first time, people started using decimals. Also, people didn't use decimals before. So when we're thinking about all of these numbers that we actually have on the GMAT, then you would realize that there are a lot of them, but they all are comprised of digits. So what are digits? These are numbers from 0 to 9. We have 10 digits. That's why we call this system that we use, our numerical system, we call Arabic system, but it's also called the decimal system, and that's a Latin word. So every single number could be made out of these digits. And I'm actually curious, if somebody could tell me, can you give me a random number between, I just want to see if there is going to be any pattern. GMAT's all about patterns. So if you can just put it in the chat box, just type any number between 1 and 50. We have about 50 people here on the webinar today. So any number between 1 and 50. I'm just curious if we are going to see any pattern. Okay, perfect. All right. Okay. All right, great. Thank you. Okay, well, thanks very much, everybody, for entering the numbers. Now, you probably can't see what everybody answered. However, let me tell you, everybody but 2 people gave me the same type of a number. Not the same number, but the same type of a number, and that was an integer. By the way, when I asked you to type a number, I didn't ask you to put an integer, but this is what most of us answered. The reason why is we think in integers. So as you are answering some questions on the GMAT, most of the people assume that answers have to be integers. In fact, there was a question on the GMAT that simply asked, what is a number that's greater than 9 and less than 11? And most people said the number is 10. That was a data sufficiency question. That seems like a really easy number, right? But yet more than half of the people get that question wrong, because most of us assume the number has to be an integer. In fact, we have an unlimited number of numbers between 9 and 11, because we have a lot of decimals there as well. If you visualize all of the numbers you're going to see on the GMAT on a number line, then we're going to have an unlimited number of numbers between any 2 numbers, because even though the integers are evenly spaced on that number line, all that space between the integers is filled with rational and irrational numbers. So rational number is essentially a fraction. Irrational number is a number that's not a fraction, like a square root of 2 or a square root of any prime number. And we're going to have a lot of them. But what's important is that there are no complex numbers. Again, no calculus, no advanced university level math. So every number on the GMAT is somewhere on this number line. And that's actually really helpful, because if you're working on some complicated questions, especially if it has to do with data sufficiency, where you're really trying to figure out where the numbers are and which number is bigger, which number is smaller, what is the range of numbers, simply sometimes drawing them on the number line is all you need to do. There's actually something else about this number line that's helpful, and that is a concept of an absolute value. So let me ask you a question. An absolute value is, as you probably remember, that has to be a positive value. So what would be an absolute value of, let's say, 10? If you can just put it in the chat box, what is an absolute value of 10? Okay, yeah, it's 10, right? That's somebody said 20. So that is, and somebody said minus 10. Okay, the absolute value of 10 is actually 10, because the absolute value is simply a distance from 0. The distance cannot be negative. How about an absolute value of minus 7? What would be an absolute value of minus 7? Okay, somebody said 27. Most of you said 7. That's, again, the distance from 0. So an absolute value is simply a positive side of that number. So the number without a minus, essentially, right? It's a 7. How about, what is an absolute value of x? What would be an absolute value of x? Okay, most of you said it's x. How about, what is an absolute value of minus x? All right, perfect. Most of you said x. Now, here's something interesting. Most of you said absolute value of x is x, and absolute value of minus x is also x. And every single one of you answers this incorrectly, even though it is a very simple question, right? Because we assume many things as we go on our everyday life. Otherwise, we can't really survive. We assume that if we see a sun outside, then the weather is nice. If it's raining, we assume that we're going to get wet. If I gave you a number x, we assumed it's positive. That's why when I asked you what's an absolute value of x, you said it's x. And then when I asked you what's an absolute value of minus x, you said it's also x, because again, we assume that x is positive. However, if I gave you x is equal to minus 1 and asked you what's an absolute value of x, you would have told me that, well, of course, it's 1, which is minus x. So we have to be careful making assumptions, because the GMAT is trying to use our habits against ourselves. It's really a test where you have to get outside of your comfort zone, overcome some of the things that have been holding us back, and sometimes some of the things that have put us or held us in a box of our thinking, and really start learning a new way to look at the questions. Right? In this specific case, that would actually depend on the sign of x. It could be x, or it could be minus x if x is negative. So if you did choose that, congratulations. All right, well, let's keep going, because so far we've learned the basic concept of numbers and where the numbers are. But what if we need numbers that are bigger? So far, we just talked about numbers up to 9. Well, that's the beauty of this numeric system. What we're going to do is join these digits together, essentially by writing them out next to each other, and that is going to be our big number. Now, of course, it's important not just to choose the right digits, but also to write them in the right place. And that is why every single place here in this number is going to be called a digits place. We also already talked about the units digit. That is actually the final digit before the decimal point in a number. But we also have a lot of other digits. For example, the tens, the hundreds, and the thousands, and the 10,000s, and so on. If we're talking about the left side of the number, we're talking about the right side after the decimal point, and we have all of these ending with THS, tenths, hundredths, and thousandths, and so on. So why do we call these places these names? There's actually a reason for that. And generally, when it comes to the GMAT, the more that you understand what's behind the name, what's behind the strategy, what's behind the concept, the easier it is going to be for you to use that concept or that strategy on a test day. So it's not, again, about simple memorization. It's about the deeper understanding. So the reason why we call these digits that way is because the digits represent how many of units, or how many tens, or how many hundreds of thousands or thousandths do we have in a number. Essentially, we are breaking that number down into components. And that is why we have these names. Now, looks like a very simple concept, right? Have 6 thousands, that's why I write it in a thousands place. Let's see how the GMAT can actually use that on the real test. Let me show you a real GMAT question. I'm going to give you about 30 seconds or so, 45 seconds to think about this, and then we will talk about this question. Here's the question that uses this concept. We have another 15 seconds to choose an answer, and then we'll talk about this question. All right. Well, let me share the results with you. It's really a toss between A and B. And I could tell you that approximately 40% of people on this call actually answered that question. So about 60% of people did not answer this question. So I am just curious if you've chosen an answer, if anybody just want to put it in the chat box, what kind of strategy have you used? And in the meantime, I'm going to share with you a couple of different strategies that you could use here. So one of the things that you can do is, of course, at first, we need to understand what the question is asking. Now, the question is telling us that we have two-digit positive integers, s and t. They do have the same digits, but in reverse order. Now, it'd be nice for us to know these digits. For example, if I were to say, I have two numbers, 52 and 25, they would be two-digit positive integers, but with the digits in reverse order, 52 and 25. Now, if I don't know the digits, this makes things a lot trickier. And speaking about variables again, and that absolute value of x. And then the GMAT is asking us, the sum of these two numbers could be all of the following except. That's also very important because the GMAT is telling us all of these could be the right answer, except for one of them that could not be. So what can we do? Well, because we don't know what the digits are, maybe what we can do is just try some numbers out. For example, we can try, let's say, maybe 23 and 32. These would be two-digit positive integers that with the same digits in reverse order. Well, we try these out and we realize it's only 55. That's a little bit too small. We need a bigger number, so maybe we can try something else, maybe 25 plus 52. Well, that's 77. That's again too small, so we need to keep going. We need to get to maybe a little closer to the numbers that we have. So how about maybe 27 plus 72? Well, that gets us to 99. And Many people would actually at this point choose A and move on. I'm curious if that's what you've done. But the question was asking us, which one could be the answer except for one? So 99 could be the answer. That's why we're actually going to eliminate it. And then we still have B, C, D, and E. So with this strategy, we'll need to keep going until we test all of the numbers. We're going to try to find these pairs of two-digit integers that add up to 121, then 132. So we'll keep trying, keep trying, keep trying. And then unfortunately, it's going to take some time, but it's certainly something that we can do. Again, in the explanation to this question, what the GMAT will suggest perhaps is here are the numbers, right? And the numbers is just, here's why 121 is also possible, because it's actually this plus this, right? 55 plus 56 plus 65, and so on and so forth. That is not going to be a good strategy on a test day. So maybe we can do something else. Let's call again this the strategy way. We've actually just learned this strategy. What we've learned is that a number consists of two digits. And in fact, even though we might not know what the digits are, let's call these places X and Y. And I've put them in brackets so that not to confuse us. This is not a multiplication of X and Y. These are two digits in these places. And we also know that T is the number with the same digits, but in reverse order. Now, if we remember what we just talked about 2 minutes ago, we remember that X is in the tens digit and Y is in the units digit. So if we were to break this number down, we know that X represents the number of tens and Y represents the number of units. So this number essentially is just 10X plus Y. And so is T, it's just 10Y plus X. We were asked to add them up. So if we were to do this, we'll just simply sum up these two expressions. And we can do some simple modifications. We'll recognize that we have 11 x's in total. So we'll combine these like terms that have the x and the y's as well. So we're down to 11x plus 11y, which again, we can simplify by rewriting it as 11 times x plus y. Now remember, x and y are digits. We just pick these variables to represent the digits. They're any number from 0 to 9. So what we just realized is that s plus t has to be a multiple of 11, has to be divisible by 11 because it's 11 times some sort of a whole number. Then when we look at the answer choices, we will recognize, hopefully fairly quickly, that A, B, C, and D are all divisible by 11, and only E is not. E is an outlier because the question was asking us for all of them except for one. That's why 186, E is the right answer. And we can actually do this in about a minute because we knew what the powers of 10 are, right? And again, what we needed to do here is, of course, recognize what are the digits? How do we put together the numbers? Normally, when we use the numbers in our everyday lives, we don't really think about these tens digits and units digits, right? But 32 is 30 plus 2. 27 is 20 plus 7. All we've done here is we broke the numbers down exactly that same way, but we had to understand the concept behind it. Because sometimes we do this without really thinking about why we do this. So if the first digit is x and the second one is y, it's simply 10x plus y, just like 27 is simply 2 times 10 plus 7, 20 plus 7. Now, this is a good way of doing this question. It's not, of course, the only way. There are other ways, and there's a quicker way. Let's again call this the mastery way. This is something that you're going to really start doing when you've done a lot of these questions. So what you can, when you were trying to save some time. Now, what you can do is you could look at the answer choices and recognize there's some pattern behind the answer choices. What is the pattern? Well, I need an outlier. Remember, this is an except question. And the pattern that I've noticed is that 4 answer choices are multiples of 11 and 1 is not. That is an outlier. So I'm going to pick E, even though maybe I don't really know why they're multiples of 11. I've recognized that they are. There probably is a reason for that. And I can use that rationale to get to the answer even quicker. Again, working with the answer choices, noticing these patterns is something that's going to save you a lot of time potentially on the test on some of these easier questions, believe it or not, so that you can get to harder questions that involve some of the harder math. Now, as we were doing this question, you might have been wondering, how did we know that A, B, C, and D are all multiples of 11? How did we know it so quickly? Wouldn't we have to divide them by 11? Well, not necessarily, because we can use what's called divisibility rules. So what are divisibility rules? Essentially, these are the rules that will help us figure out if a number is divisible by another number without dividing it. Let me give you some examples. If you're trying to understand if 132 is divisible by 3, you don't actually have to divide it. All you can do is add up the digits, 1 plus 3 plus 2. That's a 6. 6 is divisible by 3, so 132 is going to be divisible by 3. Let me give you another example. Trying to understand if 873 is divisible by 9. Well, how can we figure this out without dividing it? Again, add up the digits, 8 plus 7 plus 3, that's 18. 18 is divisible by 9, so 873 is also divisible by 9. So all we need to do is add these digits up, and we can quickly understand if a number is divisible by another number. That's amazing, right? So can we maybe use the same strategy to figure out if 34 is divisible by 7? Well, let's see. 3 plus 7, that's 7. So 7 is divisible by 7. So is 34 divisible by 7? Not really, because 35 is divisible by 7, so 34 can be. So that brings us to an important point, that there are different divisibility rules for division by different numbers. In fact, all of these are going to be in the cheat sheet we are going to send to you tomorrow morning, just because you came to this seminar. This is a cheat sheet you can print out, and you can use it to help you prepare for the GMAT. Unfortunately, you cannot use it on the test day, but you can certainly use it to help you prepare. So we put together this resource. You are going to receive it tomorrow by email. And I'm also going to share with you how you can practice this skill a little bit later. Again, knowing is important, but making sure that you know how to use it is also important. So I'll share this with you as well a little bit later in this seminar today. But I want to talk about one divisibility rule that most people don't know. It is going to be in your cheat sheet, and that is divisibility rule by 11. What the GMAT loves to do is give you things that are just outside of what most people learn and what most books mention. The majority of the GMAT books out there are going to say, learn your divisibility rules until 10. That's why the GMAT will give you divisibility rules by 11 very often. So here's how this divisibility rule works. Well, if you have some simpler numbers, such as maybe 33 or 132, I'm sure you've learned some rules that will help you quickly understand if these numbers are divisible by 11. 33, well, that's a 2-digit integer with 2 digits that are the same. 33, 44, 55, they're all divisible by 11, so that's easy. 132 as well. There's a simple rule for 3-digit integers. If you add up the 2 digits at the ends, and then that is going to be the digit in the middle, then 132 in this case is also divisible by 11. However, what if you have a number that's a little bigger than that? For example, this number. Well, don't worry, there is a way. Here's the strategy. What we're going to do is we will start from the units digit, that's the digit at the end, and we are going to split the number that way. We will then add all of the digits starting from the units digit, skipping 1 digit as we go along. We're going to get a number 19. Then we're going to add the remaining digits, and we're going to get a number 8. We'll subtract one from the other, and we're going to get, in this case, 11. As long as here you get a number that is 11 or any multiple of 11. what multiples of 11 do we know? 11, 22, 33, or maybe minus 11, or minus 22, or maybe even a 0. By the way, 0 is a multiple of 11, just like it's a multiple of any number. Then that original number is also a multiple of 11. That is a super useful rule because the GMAT has in the past given questions with numbers that are really long. There's a question that we do in our class where the number is 50 digits long. And if you don't know that rule, that is almost impossible to do that question. At 50 digits, 50, right? How do you deal with a 50-digit integer without the calculator? How do you deal with the calculator? It's not going to be helpful to use a calculator that just has 10 or 12 digits. So that's why this rule is really important. Make sure you know it. Again, it's going to be in your cheat sheet, and we'll talk about how you can practice that rule. Now, this was actually the biggest area of the GMAT. It was arithmetic, all about number properties. The second biggest area of the GMAT is algebra. Now, I know some of you are fond of algebra. Some of you really hate algebra. And some of you maybe remember that algebra is really the key to many problems. And many people are trying to use algebra on many problems because they think that algebra is the only way. On many problems, algebra is not the only way. In fact, there are many other ways to do problems. But let me share with you really quickly what is the difference between arithmetic and algebra. And of course, being comfortable with both is going to be important for the testing. Here's an example of an arithmetic problem. We have two people, and they each eat a certain number of apples. So if we want to figure out how many apples they ate together, we just have to add up these two numbers. With algebra, however, there's some sort of an unknown. There's some sort of an equation or some sort of a relationship, and something is missing. And we need to find that missing part. That's essentially what the algebra comes down to. And if we were to summarize the brilliance of the people who came up with algebra about 1,000 years ago, that's what they've done. They just said, let's call whatever we don't know, let's call it a letter instead of a number. Let's call it X. And we'll figure out what it is by putting it in some sort of an equation or maybe an inequality. Now, if you're dealing with an equation just like that, then you may have remembered, again from school, that there was a way of somehow isolating the X. And that's really the way to find the X, unless you just try some numbers and see which one works. Sometimes also is a good idea. Now, how we're going to do this is remember that when you have an equation, that equation is in balance. You have the side on the left and the side on the right, and these sides are the same. So if you want to keep the equation in balance, all you have to do is do exactly the same thing to both sides. In this case, we're going to subtract 5 from both sides. Then we're going to divide both sides by 3. And this is how we're going to isolate the X. Right, so that's something really basic. I, again, hope that it rings a bell. It's something that you remember. It's something that you've done maybe a while ago. It's something you can certainly do again. And again, I'll show you how you can how you could get access to some of the exercises where you can actually practice that skill. You have to be very comfortable manipulating any equation very quickly. And if I give you any equation, you need to be able to isolate any variable in this equation within just a few seconds. So that's, again, a skill you got to practice. Now, some of the equations are actually going to involve some higher powers. So far, we talked about linear equations, which was just X. But sometimes we have exponents in the equations. We've done an exponent question when we started our class, so I want to bring us back to the exponents. There are quite a lot of rules about exponents, in fact, because when you are, let's say, multiplying or dividing exponents, or when you are raising an exponent to some other power, you need to do certain things. There are certain rules. Sometimes you add the powers, sometimes you subtract the powers, sometimes you multiply the powers. So all of these rules could be a little confusing and could be a little overwhelming at first. We are going to include this in our cheat sheet, but the most important thing to remember is what is really an exponent. So for example, if you're looking at rule number 1, And you're thinking, okay, so x to the power of a times x to the power of b, what do I actually do here? Well, remember, or maybe take a very simple example. Let's say you have 2 to the power of 3 times 2 to the power of 5. Well, the first exponent, 2 to the power of 3, is simply 2 times 2 times 2. And 2 to the power of 5 is the same thing, just 5 times. So if you were to multiply these together, you have 3 2's from the first exponent and 5 2's from the second exponent. So if you were to actually write them all out, you'll realize you have 8 2's in front of you. And that's why you need to add them. So remembering just simply what is an exponent is often all you need. Of course, again, knowing how to use it is going to be really important. And remembering these formulas is also really helpful because you can save a few precious seconds on a test day. Now, I would like to keep going with questions because, again, I want to show you a few strategies here tonight. So let's do the next question about exponents. It is a question that is going to be hopefully using one of these rules. I'm going to give you approximately a minute to try to get to an answer, and I will talk about getting to the answer different ways. Here's the question. I'll be quiet for about a minute. All right. Now, as we are wrapping up this question, I would like to ask you so far, probably about just a quarter of the people here in the webinar voted. So please choose an answer, whatever you think that answer is. It does not really matter. This is an anonymous poll, so nobody's going to judge. And in fact, just putting your foot down and just saying, I'm going to make a choice. Right now, I'm going to make a decision. This is really important. This is my future. I'm going to learn some really awesome skills. So here's what I'm going to do. I will choose right now. I'll make the decision. And if that's the wrong decision, doesn't really matter. I'm going to learn something. That's the right decision. That's even better. Just give you 5 more seconds. Choose an answer. Again, there isn't any right and wrong answer here. There's only an answer that can help us learn something. You cannot fail this test. All right. Let me share the results with you. So as you could see, a pretty good distribution of answers. And by the majority vote, the answer is E. Well, let's actually see if the answer is E. Let's take a look at different ways of doing this question. Let's call at the, let's look at the theory way of doing this question. And that is when we're trying to use a formula. So what we can do is we could look at the numbers that look the same, 2 to the 6 plus 2 to the 6. We have the same exponent, so maybe we need to just add the basis. So 2 to the 6 plus 2 to the 6, that's got to be 4 to the 6. We can, of course, do the same thing with 3's. So it looks like the answer is E, and that's certainly what most of us have chosen. Some of you chose B. That also was a fairly popular answer, because then what you can do is say, well, 4 to the 6 plus 9 to the 6, that looks like maybe it's 13 to the 6. Or maybe I just add up all of them together, 2 plus 2 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3, that's 13. So maybe it's B. And I know I was kind of forcing you to choose an answer and make a decision. Really important to make a decision right now, today. And then you just said, okay, I'm going to do it. Doesn't matter. At least I'll learn something. And unfortunately, neither B nor E is the right answer. So where did things go wrong? This is a really awesome way for us to learn. And by the way, when you come to our class, you're going to be making so many mistakes in class. The whole class is designed to get you into different traps so you can learn from them. That's how you learn, right? It's going to be tricky to learn, but it's going to be easy on the test day because you have seen all of these traps. Reading about the formula is helpful if you're just interested in the GMAT. If you really want to master the GMAT, you gotta go through this maybe slight pain. It's not a physical pain, but a pain of getting the question wrong and overcome that frustration. So let's talk about the strategy way of doing this question. Well, I know some of you have gotten this question right, so maybe that's what you've done. You looked at the question and you recognized, well, 2 to the 6 plus 2 to the 6. I've learned it somewhere that what I can do to make this simpler is factor out 2 to the 6. These are like terms, they have something in common. So 2 to the 6. And then in brackets, what do I have? Well, I have 1 left from the first, 1 left from the other one. And that gives me 2 to the 6 times 2 to the 1. So now I can add 6 plus 1 and I get a 7. I can do the same thing with 3. And then I look at the answer choices and realize it's not really the same as 2 to the 7 plus 3 to the 7, but C does look right and nothing else matches the analysis I've just done. So I have gotten this right. So this is, again, a strategy that many of you may, if you've gotten this right, have already probably learned. This can get you to the answer in 2 minutes, maybe even a minute. There is, however, maybe an even better way. And the better way is, again, focused on your conceptual understanding of this problem. So let's talk about this better way. Now, again, if what we've just done was difficult for you, then maybe you just haven't learned the strategies. By the way, you will learn them. This is really important. Strategies are still part of our class, but that's more higher level conceptual understanding of the problems can sometimes help you get to the answer by even skipping the strategy. So here's what we can do. We can take a look at this problem and say, well, I have a little problem, and the problem is there is no rule for adding exponents. That's why all of these things, like is the base the same, is the exponent the same, that was all useless because unfortunately, we cannot apply these formulas when we're adding. We can only apply them for when we're multiplying or dividing. So what's the solution? Well, maybe we can take the addition, somehow convert it to multiplication. How can we do this? This is actually something we all learned in grade 1 in school. That's why it's been such a long time ago that we've forgotten this. Because what we've learned, if we have an apple plus an apple, we have 2 apples. If we have 2 to the 6 plus 2 to the 6, we have 2 to the 6s. So if we remember what was an exponent, what we just see in front of us, we're multiplying 2 onto itself exactly 7 times. And then, again, if we are trying to save some time and really understand what the GMAT is trying to do, we also remember that the 2 and a 3 are prime numbers. And there isn't really any way for us to somehow factor something out or combine them. There is only one answer with 2 to the 7. Whatever we do with the 3 is going to be there on its own. And if we had 2 answer choices with 2 to the 7, we might have also seen what would happen with 3, but in this case, we don't have to. We can choose C and move on. We can do half of the problem quicker because we actually didn't even use any formulas. I hope you find this fascinating. I certainly do. Let's talk about one more concept. We will do a couple more questions, and I still want to save a little bit of time for us, of course, to talk about how we're going to structure our studies. And of course, we still have to hear from Kyung-Yo about the tips. So not every relationship on the algebra is going to be an equation. Again, relationship is 2 sides, right? Just like with humans, we have 2 sides. When we have an inequality, inequalities also have 2 sides. Inequalities could be either greater or less than, or sometimes they're just not equal. There are different ways for the two numbers to be not equal. Now, inequality is actually very similar to equations because just like equations, they have two sides. But there was an important rule when it comes to the inequality. And that is, if you're trying to manipulate an inequality, you got to remember a very important rule, and that's called the flip sign rule. So what is that rule? If you are multiplying or dividing both sides of the inequality by a negative number, by a number less than 0, you would need to reverse the direction of the sign. So for example, if you have an inequality minus 3x is less than 6, and you're trying to isolate for the x, you need to divide both sides by minus 3. In this case, because it's a negative number, we're going to flip the negative sign, or the sign of the inequality. Really simple. I'm sure many of you remember this rule, so let's apply this rule again to a GMAT question. Here's a data sufficiency question now. Now, the way the data sufficiency questions work is there is a question and there are two statements. You do not need to answer that question. You just need to figure out if it is possible to answer that question given the information in the statement. There are 5 answer choices that simply tell us what statement would be necessary in order to answer this question. Don't worry about the answer choices. As you are doing this question, I'm going to give you about 45 seconds. Just think about whether statement 1 is sufficient to answer that question, or would statement 2 be sufficient to answer that question? Or maybe you need both of them, or maybe neither is enough. So I'll be quiet for about 45 seconds. See what you need in order to answer this question. Information from which of the two statements would you require? And if you don't really know what the answer choices mean, that's completely okay. Just answer this question. Would statement 1 be enough for me to answer this question? If I knew information from statement 1, would it be enough for me to answer that question? And then if I knew information from statement 2, would that be enough for me to answer that question? I'm going to give you 10 more seconds to answer that question. To choose an answer. So far, about 1/3 of people who actually answered that question. Okay, so what's very interesting is we have the equal number of people, 1/4 of everybody answered A, B, or D. So it seems like it's a difficult question because no matter what the answer is, not more than 1/4 of people answer this question right. However, it looks like a very easy question, right? What could be easier than answering the question whether x is more than 2y? So that's really where we're starting to get a better understanding of what the GMAT's trying to do. It's not just about knowing the formula or not just about knowing the rules. So let's talk about how we can approach this question. Maybe let's start with the theory way again. Now, if x is more than 2y, so if I know from statement 1 that x divided by y is more than 2, well, sometimes it's a little hard to wrap your head around what is it I'm trying to evaluate. Because sometimes what many people do is they would look at the information in the question and try to understand if that's sufficient to answer the statement. So they're going to look at statement 1 and I'll say, yeah, I know that because x is more than 2y. So that should be sufficient. And then because I know that x is more than 2y, statement 2 is not sufficient because it's actually not true. Right? So it's again hard within especially a short time to just understand what am I trying to analyze and what's the direction of my logic. If A leads to B, is it necessarily that B leads to A, right? That's what's involved here. So let's maybe look at how most people approach that question, even if they've already seen some data sufficiency question. They know that information from the statements need to be used to analyze the question. So what we'll do is we'll take information from the statement, x divided by y is more than 2. We'll multiply both sides by y, and we'll get x is more than 2y. And the question was, is x more than 2y? And it looks like yes, so that should be sufficient. Let's look at statement 2. Statement 2 says x is minus 2y is less than 0. What can we do is maybe move the 2y to the right, so x is less than 2y, and that should be sufficient, right? And we can do this in about a minute. I know some of you answered A because from statement 2, you're getting x is less than 2y, but the question was whether x is more than 2y. So it looks like the answer is no, so maybe it's not sufficient, right? So that's why it's a challenging question. And A wasn't actually right, and neither was D. This was also not right. So what is the right answer here? Well, just like when I asked you what's an absolute value of x, and you said it's x, at this time, when we ask you essentially to multiply both sides by y, you just simply say, well, sure, I can do it. But we don't know whether y is positive or negative. So that is why when you're multiplying by y, you gotta keep in mind that it could be negative, and it is negative, then we need to flip the sign. And because we do not know whether it is negative, we could potentially have 2 different answers. That's why statement 1 is not sufficient. But statement 2, when we add 2y to both sides, try to make this statement look like the question, we'll realize that x is actually less than 2y. And regardless of what y and x's are, this is always going to be true. So we always get the same answer, and that answer is no. So statement 2 is going to be sufficient. And that's why the answer to this question is B, and you can do this in 30 seconds. By the way, this question is, believe it or not, a difficult question. That is certainly in the question in the 650 and above level. But if you learn how to do these questions, if you learn the approach, the step-by-step approach to these questions, you can absolutely knock these questions out of the park. This is a question you should be doing in under 30 seconds on a test day. So the big question is, how do you master these skills? What is that step-by-step process? And what is that missing part? And by the way, we will do one more question. I'll show you exactly again, just to reinforce how this concept works. And we'll talk about the resources as well. So how do you master these skills? Well, yes, of course, you can read a book, but reading a book is not going to help you master the skill. Reading the explanations in the book, reading the question in the book is not going to help you master these skills. Now, many people ask us when they begin studying for the GMAT, that's actually the question we hear a lot. What is the book I should read? And my answer is usually any of them is good, because any book is going to give you a little bit of a theory review, is going to give you a bunch of questions you can try, and it's going to have an answer key when you can check whether you got that question right. But would you be able to master the skill by simply reading a book? Well, not necessarily. There's a missing piece, and that is the piece that we actually all know because we've learned the skill of driving a car, for example. The first step is you read a book, you learned the rules. That was really important. But then you got into a car, and you got into a car not by yourself. You got into a car with someone. That's why you came here to this class today, to learn something, because you understand that something is missing. There is something out there that I can learn. There are these strategies, there are these techniques that somebody already figured out, because the GMAT exam was around for 65 years, and I can learn these skills. And there's also something really important, and that is simply watching somebody do it is not going to be sufficient, because all of the information that you need, everything is available online. You can go on YouTube and you can find pretty much every strategy. But would you necessarily be able to use that strategy? That's a different question. You need to try this yourself. If you want to learn how to drive a Formula One car, well, I could say I've watched almost every single Formula One race. I was a really big fan of Formula One in the 90s. I watched almost every single race for about 5 years. And then I could say, well, I'm really skilled at driving a Formula One car. I can just go and drive it, right? Because I watched somebody else do it. So that's the same idea. That's why when you come into this webinar and when you're getting all of these amazing strategies, then you need to go home and you need to say, I'm going to start applying this right now. It's something that I need to do. And I also realize that when I'm applying these strategies, at first, I won't be successful. So I need that push. I need that feedback. I need to understand where are things going wrong. That's why the best athletes in the world have coaches. Now, if we become your coaches, I would love that because all of our coaches are extremely experienced and on average have more than 10 years of experience teaching the GMAT. But if for whichever reason you can't work with us and you have a coach that can help you, then absolutely I would encourage you to work with that coach because you need to know what's not working well for you, and you also need to overcome some bad habits. That's going to be really important. And of course, the ultimate goal is to develop enough of a confidence that on a test day, you can deal with any question that comes your way. The same strategy that we've used when we learned how to drive a car, we can apply for the GMAT. The first step you're going to take, if you come and study with us, you are going to be learning some theory. And that is something you'll do before you even come to GMAT classes. We're going to give you exercises to do that you're going to be working on at home using a platform we're going to provide. I know many of the GMAT courses include this as a premium resource. I know Kaplan, for example, charges $300 for that premium resource just to help you remember what you learned in school. But that's a foundation that's so important that we give this to every person who's taking our class. And then, of course, you will come to the class and you'll begin learning the strategies. It is going to be learning by doing. It is going to be super interactive. You're going to be doing in class as much as the instructor does, maybe even more, because you need to work hard and sweat and do the questions, because on the other side of the class, you need to say, I've done it. It's not enough for me to see the instructor do it, because I know the instructor can do it. He scored 750, 780. He's done it for 10 years. So I'm not paying money for this class to watch him do it. I'm here to learn. And of course, you're going to be getting feedback. And ultimately, you need to practice a lot so you can master this skill. So that's the structure that you need to follow when you are studying. Our classes are structured exactly the same way. If you come and join our class, we're going to walk you through this process exactly step by step. It takes about 6 weeks to be in class. There's work to do before the first class. There's work to do after the last class. The most important thing is we'll be there with you along the way from the very first step on the GMAT. That's why sometimes when we have students come to us after they have studied for a long time, it's really frustrating for them because now they need to overcome some of the bad habits. So it's good to start with this. Come to the class, we'll get all the resources. You don't have to buy anything extra. And if you need to repeat your classes, you can do that for free. We also throw in 3 personal tutoring sessions because at some point you are going to be needing help. Everybody needs help when you're studying for the GMAT. Everybody needs coaching. That is on us. We really want to reduce that barrier for you to get personal help. So what are the classes that are coming up? There's a class that's starting in about 12 days, 11 days. That is going to be on mornings, on weekends, Saturday and Sunday in the morning, 9 to 1. You're going to be done by 1 p.m. You get the whole day in front of you. There's also a class that's going to be on weekend afternoons. That is going to be from June 13th. That's also Saturday and Sunday. And then there's a class on evenings as well. We do have early bird discounts for these classes. Generally, when you sign up at least 30 days in advance, you can save $200. And when you sign up at least a week in advance, you'll save $100. So the first class, there's still a $100 early bird discount. The other classes, there's still a $200 early bird discount, but not for very long. And we do have a very special offer for today, so stick around. I'm going to show this to you in just a couple of minutes. This is something that's available just because you came here to this webinar. It's something very special we don't normally offer. Now, our guarantee is better than the money-back guarantee. That is the guarantee that we are going to work with you until you are done. And that's so much more valuable. that if somebody takes your money and just gets you into the class, you finish the class, you didn't learn anything, you've just waited your 6 weeks, and they'll say, okay, so if I give you your money back, you cannot get your time back. So it's going to be so much more valuable that we guarantee that you're going to work efficiently. We'll be there with you all the way. And if you need that 700, we're going to work with you. We've had people who started with 200 and got to 700. A very ambitious goal, but they did it because they were dedicated, and we just were there to help them, to facilitate. Now, our classes do focus on both quant and verbal approximately equally. But in a quant, there's so many different strategies that if you haven't yet achieved scores of 50 or 51 on quant, you can absolutely do that by learning some of these strategies. So how does that process work? I promised I'm going to show you the resources. So the first step is that online practice resource where you're going to be working on applying the skills you've learned in class. Then, of course, you come to the class. The classes are fully interactive. Right now, they're online. However, when we reopen after the pandemic, you're welcome to come and take our classes in person if you are in one of the major cities when we offer classes. At the end of the class, you're going to be doing lots of additional practice tests. We're going to be monitoring your progress. We'll give you feedback. And during this time, you can come back, sit down with instructor one-on-one. Right now, it's by Zoom or Google Meet. And you use these 3 tutoring hours. You can come back to class, so lots of support. And then at the end of the whole journey, you are going to have a toolkit. So when you show up for the class, we're not going to hold anything back. Everything we know, we're going to share with you. And we'll make sure you know it. So that's going to be really important. That's really going to be the key. So you show up for the test day, you're fully equipped to deal with any question that comes your way. Now, I know some of you may have been studying already for a while. Maybe you've taken classes somewhere else, or maybe you worked with a private tutor. Well, in this case, you might just need help with getting access to some good resources. Now, we use an online platform where a lot of our students will do their homework and they will do their practice tests. That is the online platform that's generally included with our course. However, it is available as a standalone practice resource. You can find it on this URL, admitmaster.com/offer. There's a 30% discount that we're going to offer you right now. So for example, if you get it for 6 months, normally it's $600, but right now it's available for $419. And you can even get it for 3 months as well. So you can go there. That offer is available until midnight tomorrow. And there is a 7-day free evaluation period. So within the first 7 days, if you don't like that platform, we just deactivate your access and give you all of your money back. So again, the 30% off is only available until tomorrow. You can just try it out. You can think about it, or you can try it. You have no downside of trying it. If you really like it, you can keep it. If you don't like it, you got nothing to lose. Let me share a couple of other special offers that we have right now, and then we'll do one more question and we'll talk about MBA admissions. So here's the offer that we have right now for you at the webinar. You're going to find it at admitmaster.com/offer. I'll show this URL again. So if you're just looking for the practice platform, you're going to get 30% off. That's until midnight tomorrow. There's a special code that I'll show you again, and you'll get it by email as well. Then there is an on-demand version of our classes where you're watching classes online. What we will do is we'll give you access to additional tutoring sessions. So you have a lot more support with this on-demand option. So essentially twice a week, you can come and ask questions. And then if you do decide to join our live training program, the next program that starts in about a week and a half, that's $15.99 Canadian dollars. If you register by midnight tomorrow for that option, we are going to give you a free resume review and editing. That's a service that we normally charge $300 for. And most of the other companies charge even more, up to $1,000. So we will work with you to help you develop a good resume for your application. And that is included in that offer if you take our live training, but only if you sign up until midnight tomorrow. You can still join our course afterwards, but that offer is not going to be available anymore. I know many people are asking, can I get these offers afterwards? Unfortunately, they're all programmed in our system, so there is no way for us to offer that if you don't sign up by midnight tomorrow. Now, this is all something you're going to find on the website, but I wanted to show you one final question. That is a question from the official guide. I just took it from the official guide. That is the question, that's the last question in the diagnostic section. I'm going to get you to read that question first, try to make sense of it. Okay, so what do you think? It looks a little confusing, right? Let me show you the answer choices. Maybe once you see them, the question is going to be a lot less confusing. I can see you laughing. I know I can't see you right now, but I can feel you laughing when I said that this is going to make this question less confusing. Because variables, right? We don't like variables. And the question itself is quite confusing. I've seen lots of explanations online. And what I'm going to show you right now, I have not seen anywhere. But this is what we teach in class. This is what I'm going to show you right now. Oh, yes. Yes. Thank you. So the most important thing, of course, is to understand what's going on here. Somebody decides to break the lockdown, essentially just go for a run. We need some exercise outside. So Aaron, he was running for some time, then he walked back home by the same route. There's different speeds. And then we know he was away for 2 hours. Unfortunately, it's not really super helpful because variables, right? No numbers. But that's what's going on. We know he was away for 2 hours. We know the speed there and the speed back. I'm just watching outside and I see a person jogging. And the question was, how far did that person go before he decided to turn back? Now, the distance, we remember, is calculated by multiplying rate by time. Well, unfortunately, we have 2 different rates, but only 1 time. So maybe we can say, well, there's distance from home, which is d1, and time from home, there's a time back home. The times together add up. That's what exactly I found on every single explanation on every single website. And then, of course, the distances are the same. Now we can make an equation. We can do a couple manipulations. I know it looks really awesome when somebody with a PhD in math does that, but for a normal person, after 5 minutes, you probably realize there are better questions to do. Let me move on. Looks difficult. Let's skip directly into the mastery option. Now, I know normally when we find the rate, we need to multiply distance, we multiply rate by time. And what we normally do is we multiply speed by time. That's what we always do, right? So we're never going to, let's say, add speed to time. That makes no sense, right? Nobody in their right mind would ever add speed to time, right? Nobody ever, except for the GMAT. Because there's some answer choices here where the GMAT does exactly that. It's adding speed to time. That's not what we can do. So we can eliminate these answer choices because we know that's stupid. So B, D, and E are all out. We cannot add X and T. X is a speed, T is a time. How can we do this? So now we're down to 2 answer choices. Literally, we have done 0 math so far. 2 answer choices. And when I'm down to 2 answer choices, the best part is I just have to look at one. Because if that one is right, then I'm done. If it's wrong, it's the other one. I want to be lazy. I have a master in math. I want to do as little math as possible because the less math I do, the less chance I'm going to make a mistake somewhere. So I'm going to look at the answer choices, and it looks like A is a little simpler. So let's look at A. A gives me speed divided by speed times time. Well, wait a second. That's not really how we calculate the average speed. But if you divide speed by speed, the speeds are going to cancel out. The miles an hour cancel out. I just have hours left. And I'm not looking for hours. I'm looking for the distance. So A is wrong. C is the only one that's left. And all I've done is simply look at what kind of unit of measure would the answer be in? And I can do this in literally just 30 seconds. I don't have to do anything else here in this question. I am done. I find it a lot more enjoyable. Now, can you learn this? You absolutely can. How long would it take? Well, it depends a little bit on your commitment, but I can submit to you it is possible to do this in less time than you think. Here's one of the clients we just recently had. An original score of 570, got to 760, took him 7 weeks, and got a score of 50 on quant, 42 on verbal, and literally just followed the homework that we've assigned, did the practice test, got out there and got 760 on the first attempt. Because here's something really important about the GMAT. Anybody can get a score of 700 or more on the GMAT. Anybody. It won't be easy because you are competing against approximately 600,000 other candidates. Your percentile score is actually measured against everybody who did this test in the last 3 years. So if you want to get a score of 700, that's what most people want, all you need to do is just beat 530,000 people. So essentially, if you want the results in the top 10%, you need to think differently from these other 90% of people. So ladies and gentlemen, you have some decisions to make. I know it's forcing you to make some decisions on the questions, but now you got to make a decision. What am I going to do? What will I learn? How would I approach it? I wanted to share with you the way. You have to choose. But I want to tell you one final thing here, and then I'll pass this on to Kumio. And that is, if there was ever a time in life that you really wanted to achieve something and you haven't, I know I've certainly been guilty a lot when I really wanted something and I haven't got it. And when I look back, there was always only one reason for me not achieving it. And that was that story I told to myself why I cannot have it. Sometimes we call it an excuse. I like the word a story, right? The story looks better. If I didn't get something, oh, there was a reason for that. I just, I didn't have the time. I didn't have the money. I didn't know what to do, right? I didn't believe in myself. That's why I didn't achieve it. And I've told this story to myself so many times that, the time I told this story, I might as well already achieved that. So I want to just share with you a real quick story. These are all true stories, by the way. That first story, I'm not going to say the name of this person because this person could be embarrassed, and you might know this person. So this person said, I met him a while ago, and he said, I want to do well in the GMAT, but I don't have the time to come to these workshops. I don't have the time to come to the class. I got to just squeeze in some time at home because I don't have the time to commit. He took a diagnostic test. He scored 240. I met him 2 years later at one of the MBA events. And what he told me is he studied for 2 years, and he actually didn't have the time, but he took 3 months of work because he really wanted to be dedicated. And he studied 3 months, 6 hours a day. He did every single question in every GMAT book he found in the library. He took the GMAT 5 times, and he thought that he actually saved a lot of money because he didn't actually buy any GMAT books. Every single book was from a library. His score was 310, his highest score. And he finally gave up. So when I asked him, how much money do you think you lost? Or how much money do you spend on the GMAT? He actually said, I spent zero, I spent nothing. And then I told him, well, you know what? Unfortunately, you've lost over $1 million by not coming to a $1,500 course. Because the fact that you gave up, and he actually really gave up. He didn't even want to think about this anymore. He went somewhere else. He just gave up on his MBA plans. On average, if you have an MBA, and I'm trying to be conservative here, an average person with an MBA over your lifetime will earn $2 million more than a person with just an undergraduate degree. That's on average. So by not investing $1,500 in a course, he's just given up about $2 million. I'm trying to be conservative, just to say million, right? So not a good story, right? But we're telling ourselves these stories. I don't have the time. Here's another story. Some other person said, I don't have the money. And by the way, I don't really need any help because I have an engineering background. I'm good with math. I'm really smart. My diagnostic score was 610. He was dragged into a course by a friend, literally dragged into a course. A friend who said, I need a buddy to study. You come in with me. He took the GMAT twice, and his highest score was 760. He graduated from INSEAD, and now he works for one of the top investment banks. He said, I don't have the money, but he found the money. He found the money for the program. He said, I don't have the money for the GMAT. I don't have the money for my MBA. I don't have the money for travel. He kept telling himself this story. He graduated. Now he's making 3 times more money than he was making before. So that was a good investment. And then there's another story I hear a lot, which is when somebody's saying, I don't believe I can do it. I'm not a math person. I know some of you said I'm not a math person, so I don't think I can do the GMAT. This is difficult. Well, let me tell you, here's Alex. He has a music background. He played in a band. We have actually a client right now in our course that's going on right now at this very moment, also plays in a band, also music background, went to exactly the same school as Alex. Diagnostic score 580, high verbal, low math. That's pretty common. Some people have the opposite, high math or verbal. He didn't really believe that anything can help him. He studied for 3 months, and at the end of the 3 months, he did all the homework, all the exercises we assigned. He took the test once. The 3 hours of private tutoring that we've done with him, he used for one purpose and one purpose only, to help him have confidence that he can do it. He didn't need any help with any strategies. He needed help with the confidence. He scored 760, got a full ride MBA scholarship, 100% scholarship. He won the first place in the Economist case competition worldwide. He was on the cover of the Economist. I don't know if any of you read the Economist. He was actually on the cover. That's how I found this out. He got literally snatched from his program. He got a job with a consulting firm. He makes 5 times more money, and it was all because he wouldn't give up. And he said, I believe I can do it, and I know there's somebody can help me. And even though I don't maybe believe in myself, there was somebody who believes in me. And there's a saying you may have heard, get somebody to believe in you until you can believe in yourself. So if you don't believe in yourself, come to us, we're going to believe in you. So what will you do now? Here's a question that I have for you. Will you just read a book, or will you actually get in a car? Will you just learn the theory and get what people score on average, which is 560, or will you start learning the skills and get a score that's much higher? Our students get an average 670 because we really make them work hard and learn these amazing skills. So I'd like to invite you to a few things. First of all, if you've never experienced the greater GMAT, feel free to go on this website, jmsb.trygmat.com. I'm going to send you a link. We are doing this class in partnership with Concordia. I apologize. I went a little bit over my allocated time. I promise, Kumio, it is going to be worthwhile for you to stick around and hear a lot of these tips. You are going to get a bonus free report of your performance section by section if you go on that website. It's an amazing software that we've developed here in partnership with JMSB. And then, of course, join us in our class. We will take the guesswork out of that whole experience. You're going to say 10 years down the road, you'll say, I'm so glad that I invested in this program because now I really have the job that I love. I'm making so much money. And this is really something that was the stepping stone for me. This is what we really want you to say at the end of all of this. We are doing lots of additional workshops. There's a workshop that we'll be doing this Thursday on goal setting. This is how you can achieve the goal. If you set a goal and you haven't achieved it, there was that story. So I gave you a really short preview from that workshop. So come and join us this Thursday. Our verbal refresher class is going to be 2 weeks from now. Most importantly, go to that website, admitmaster.com/offer, and you're going to see that promo code. Remember, it's available until tomorrow midnight only. So make sure you take advantage of these offers, available in the next 24 hours. I will stick around. Let's give a warm welcome to Kumio. Thanks so much for sticking around. Thanks so much for putting up with these strategies. I know they made you slightly uncomfortable. That's a way for us to learn. If you have any questions, put them in the Q&A box. I will now answer my screen to let Kumio share super valuable tips with you. Make sure you stick around. This is something you cannot find on a website.
Thank you so much, Sergey. And I kind of want to add to what you said about that story that you tell yourself. Not only does that happen, for the GMAT, but it also happens to a lot of candidates who decide not to do MBAs at all because they convince themselves that, okay, maybe I don't have the right background, maybe I don't need it, maybe I don't see a point in doing that. There's multiple reasons to do an MBA, and so definitely consider it if you want to advance your career, if you want to pivot your career. Come talk to us in admissions, and we're more than happy to tell you about it. So my name is Anna, or Kumi. I'm the manager in recruitment and marketing for the graduate programs at Concordia University School of Business. If you want to reach out to me, I'm available on all these different platforms, and I'll let you know at the end as well. And today I'm going to tell you a little bit more about tips and tricks on what we expect from an admissions perspective. A lot of you might be wondering, what is happening with COVID-19 as well? How does that affect the admissions criteria and all of these things? I'm happy to answer some of those questions. For the most part, like the admission requirements stay pretty much the same. The admission process stays the same. We're all looking for what we call the holistic approach in terms of what how we define which candidate is the right fit for our program. So you'll hear that a lot. You'll hear a lot about, is this a right fit for you? Is this program the right fit for you? Are you the right fit for the program? And a lot of how we judge that part is depending on, of course, a combination of factors. So it's not only your academic credentials, although it can help position yourself well, but it also matters to have a solid work experience, to demonstrate leadership potential through different ways, if possible to have extracurricular involvement so that we can find out a little bit more about who you are. And of course, communication skills are key for the job market, so therefore it is also key for a great MBA experience. So I'll dive a little bit more into each of these points very briefly. I know you had a long evening, so if you want to get more details about these, please feel free to contact me. So starting with the academic potential, so obviously you're here to study for the GMAT, to prepare for the GMAT. The GMAT is an important part of the application, and we do look at it. It's important to take a look at whether the school has minimum score, whether they have a range, recommended average, do they recommend you to be above the average, how does that affect not only your admissions but also scholarship. And of course, we're going to be looking at your GPA from your undergraduate degree. So typically, if you have, let's say, a less competitive GPA, then you'll want to score higher on the GMAT to kind of compensate. Like, it's not only a matter of numbers, it's also a matter of, for us to make sure that you can take the rigor of the academic program that the MBA is. There will be, of course, plenty of professional opportunities and involvement, but ultimately, you still need to graduate to have those 3 letters at the end of your name. So we want to make sure that you're prepared for that. When we look at your academic potential, we also look at, factors that might have affected your GPA. So if some of you were extremely involved in your undergraduate degree, you were involved in every club, and maybe your GPA wasn't a 3.9 or a 4.0, that's okay. We're going to be looking at that as well. So make sure to highlight that in your resume. And if you have other certifications that you can add to your resume as well, these are things that we'll take into account when we evaluate your academic potential. So if you have, for example, you've done your CPA or your CA, if you're coming from the international, or if you've done all 3 levels of the CFA or any level of the CFA, your PMP, or let's say you've done additional studies like your graduate certificate, master's, diploma, anything that you've done, we will be taking a look at and we will take into consideration. And again, the tips that I'm giving you today are not only applicable to JMSB, it's really applicable to any business school that you decide to apply to. So feel free to reach out to each of the schools to find out what are some of those criteria they're looking at, and you'll see that it's quite similar. In the current context of COVID-19, obviously, the application deadlines sometimes have been extended. So it's, again, important to contact each individual school to find out what those policies are. In our case, we accept GMAT scores until the very last minute. So typically, our deadline is June 1st, but we've decided to extend it until well into July. So reach out to us to find out if you can still apply for Canadian candidates. For international candidates, we accept candidates for winter 2021, although some schools might have only 1 intake per year. So again, very important to double check with each individual school in the context that is happening right now. We know it's a difficult situation for everyone, and we encourage you to leverage this time to prepare as much as possible for the different tasks, for the application. And we're trying our best, of course, to make sure that you can start your studies and pursue your goals, without being affected too much by that situation. Another part, of course, we mentioned academics. Professional achievements are also extremely important. You might be wondering, okay, is it more important to have a long work experience, or is it more important to have like career growth? I think for us, it's really more about the quality versus the quantity. Sometimes you have candidates who have only 2-3 years of work experience and do tremendously well in the MBA because they bring with themselves a lot of leadership qualities or a lot of experience that they've dealt with their previous company. We'll be looking at that quality, and when we talk about quality, we talk about what kind of responsibilities you've had, but also what kind of growth. Have you had the opportunity to lead teams or lead projects? Make sure to highlight that in your resume and not stick to just the regular task, but really talking about, how did you impact the company that you're working at? How can we measure that impact? So, for example, if you're a salesperson, maybe you want to say the sales growth that you've had, or if you are a marketer, you might want to talk about the number of impressions on some of your campaigns. Anything that you can quantify is always a positive thing to add to your resume. Career growth is also important. If you have had promotions, or even if you've been assigned projects that you didn't have like a growing amount of responsibility, highlight that in your resume as well. We're looking to see through your work experience, what are some of the qualities that a future manager or future leader would have. So of course, that leadership potential, your teamwork ability, your ability to make decisions, how much responsibility was entrusted to you. And of course, these are the qualities we're looking for our MBA candidates, because this will also affect what kind of experience you're going to have in the classroom. There's a lot of team projects, there's a lot of presentation, case competition, and they do require you to have those skills. So make sure to highlight those as much as possible. And your professional achievements are important, but also your personal achievements. So sometimes we have candidates, again, who come with very different backgrounds. They might be coming with a music background or a sports background, like, well, I've never done business before. Well, don't select yourself out. That's absolutely okay to have a different background. On the contrary, highlight how different you are and what you bring to a cohort. You're learning as much from your professors as you're learning from your peers. So of course, you want to have that diversity in the classroom. But any achievements that you've done, if you've had awards, even if it's a personal achievement, like, I don't know, climbing the Mount Everest, or if you've been really involved in a social cause, or if you've been involved in volunteering, or if you've started your own business. Entrepreneurship is also very important. And it's okay, it can be a failed business, that happens. Just highlight what are some of those opportunities that you've had to try something different, and put that in your resume, and alongside with your work experience. This is something we will consider and that we'll look at with great interest. When it comes to addressing the school and writing essays, I think it's really important to be who you are, to be genuine in your interactions, to be yourself, of course. Of course, keep it always professional. And I always mention that, make sure to check your spelling, whether it is in an essay, whether it's an email. Make sure to address the right school. It's a little bit awkward when you receive an email or you receive an essay that is directed at another school. We do understand that you're in touch with multiple schools, and that's completely okay. But if you were to apply to a job, you would not necessarily address them with the wrong company name, right? So it's the same thing for MBA admissions. I strongly recommend to write also your essays yourself. I mean, you might be tempted to get maybe someone's input on your essay, and that's completely fine. But it is important that you write it yourself, because when it comes to an interview process, we often link the essay with the person. And then if you haven't written it yourself, you'll find yourself in a bit of trouble when we ask questions about it. And if possible, stay within the word limit. We do read a tremendous amount of essays every year. And so we do have a word limit to limit those the amount of reading we have to do. And so it's an exercise of being concise and being precise while being impactful at the same time. So if you can't stay within that word limit, that would be great. And then when it comes to referees, a lot of candidates ask us, okay, should I choose the CEO of my company? Should I choose a VP? How impactful does this referee have to be? I think the most important thing is that your referee has to know you well. Preferably someone who's managed you directly, someone who's you know, mentored you, someone who can really talk about your professional development in that company if it's professional reference. Some schools will accept as well academic reference, so maybe a professor who's worked a lot with you, someone who can really be your champion. You want to make sure those letters of reference are impactful. I tend to recommend not to write the letters of reference, but I do understand that sometimes you're asking someone who's extremely busy and you might be tempted to write it for them. If that is the case, make sure that you're not the one writing all 3 letters. It has happened in the past that we've received 2 or 3 letters written by the same person, and then it really shows. So again, avoid like a slightly awkward conversation. And then let your referees know why you're applying for an MBA, what the timeline is, how does that impact you, so that they know what to highlight in the letter, they know how important it is to you, and they're not going to delay. Very often when an application takes a long time to be completed is because we're still waiting on those referees. And so if you let them know ahead of time, you know, they will make sure to fill those out as quickly as possible. When it comes to the interview, there's multiple types of interviews for MBA. You'll see that we have some that are video interviews, you might have phone interviews, you might have now Zoom interviews, I suppose. And it's important to treat the interview the same way that you would for any job interview. So be punctual, be prepared, dress the part. If you're doing a Zoom interview, please wear pants. Sometimes it's a little bit awkward when it happens. You're having a discussion, a great discussion with a candidate, and they get up accidentally, and then you know, catastrophe, right? So let's avoid these kind of situations. Make sure to research the school and prepare questions. And again, address the right school. I tend to recommend all candidates to treat every school like their #1 school. Obviously, you will always have like your preferred institution to attend, but I think it's really important to treat all institutions with the same level of professionalism. It speaks a lot to you, about you and your character, and we do value that a lot. The other thing is when you interact with different schools, make sure to make valuable use of the admissions team time. So for example, in this day and age, any information you can find online, you know, like the minimum scores and all of these things you can find on the website. Make sure you can build a meaningful relationship with the different advisors. We're all here to help you find the right program. And our goal is not just to get you into our program, but to make sure that you're you know, it's going to be the right fit for you, that our program can offer you what you're looking for, and that you in turn will also be contributing to the kind of cohort we're trying to build. So make sure to build those relationships, connect with alumni and current students, find out more about the experience of people who have been through it and who are going through it, because that's the best measure of whether a program will be the right fit for you. And of course, take the process seriously with all the different schools. You know, stay in touch. Sometimes it happens, like we're in touch with candidates regularly, you talk to them every week, and then all of a sudden they've been admitted to another school and they drop off the face of the planet. Just make sure to let the admissions people that you're in touch with know, you know, and be transparent about your intentions. Sometimes you'll be applying to multiple schools, you'll be receiving multiple offers. Let us know. We all talk in any case. There may be this perception that, you know, the school admissions team might not be talking to each other, but it does happen that we are in touch. So, you know, keep the relationship with everyone as positive as possible, as transparent as possible, and make valuable use of our time. And we'll be happy to help you no matter what it is that you need. And then, of course, I think it's really important to figure out the why. Why do you want to do an MBA? What is your current situation right now? What are you trying to achieve with that? And how does the school or how does the MBA program fit into these goals? Sometimes it doesn't have to be 100% defined, but it will help you when it comes to preparing your application. It will help you when it comes to the interview. It will help you when you'll be talking to different graduates of the program and when you're networking. So it's good to have like a general idea of what it is that you want to do. So think about those career goals, and it's okay to revisit them later. A lot of MBAs come in with a specific goal and then change from a month to another. So it does happen, and there's no shame in that at all. And then find out if the MBA program is the right for you based on different factors that you're trying to achieve, your financial situation, the location, what kind of goals you have, what kind of involvements you wish to have, what kind of learning methodology it is. It's really important to really do that thorough research to make sure that you have the best experience. If you do that thorough research, and if you you know, meet with different admissions representatives, you meet with different alumni, and then you say, okay, this is the right MBA program for me, then you'll be sure that you have a great experience no matter what. So I see there might be a few questions on the chat, but I'll check that afterwards. I just want to do a little bit of shameless promotion for JMSB, for John Molson School of Business. So our John Molson MBA is ranked #1 in Canada for return on investment by QS, #1 in Canada for entrepreneurship by The Economist. And The Economist and Bloomberg have also placed us in the top 5 in Canada overall. So we're very happy about that, but that's not, typically I recommend not to look only at the rankings. I think it's really important to talk about the experience. And what we offer at JMSB is a really personalized and flexible experience. It's a small class size. We only accept about 80 students in the fall and 40 in the winter. It's a wide network. On the other hand, we do have a lot of students who do part-time program, and about 50% of our students are local. So you're tapping into a strong local network, but also a diverse network with our international students. Flexible schedule. We have class in the morning and in the evening, so it can fit within your busy lifestyle. We are a case-based learning experience, so you're going to be working on cases. We believe in practical learning and experiential learning, so anything that has to do with case competition, taking on cases, investment management, all of these things that you want to kind of take on and take running when you go to the industry. These are the things we want to expose you to. And finally, we offer an excellent return on investment as per the QS ranking. Our tuition is really affordable. So for Canadian students from outside of Quebec, it's approximately $15,000, 1.4 in total. And for Quebec students, it's only $6,000 in total. International students, approximately 40,000. And our placement rate within 3 months of graduation is 97% with competitive base salary of 87,000. That's not including bonuses and non-guaranteed compensation. So quite comparable to other top 5 universities, but at a very affordable price. So I'm done with my shameless promotion. If you want to hear more about our MBA programs, or if you want to hear more about our students, I invite you to join one of our incoming info sessions. We have one this week for the full-time part-time MBA, May 14 at 7 p.m. We have an MBA in investment management info session next week at 7 p.m. on May 21st. And if you're interested in hearing this, the story of one of our students, we have MBA alumna Carolyn Corville that I'll be interviewing. We did a career switch to consulting. She'll be online with me at 12 p.m. so at noon Eastern time on May 22nd. And if you want more tips and tricks, you want something a little bit more detailed than what I just said, then come to our admissions tip and trick webinar on May 27 at 7 p.m. And I'm going to leave my contact information here. And then if you have any questions, I'll stick around as well with Sergey. If you have any questions about admissions, about the situation of COVID-19, about anything at all, we're happy to answer your question. And if not, you can always reach out to us by email.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kumio. Again, thank you for sticking around, and thank everybody for sticking around here in this late hour. We are going to be here for, thank you. We'll be here for a few more minutes. If you have any questions, just please put them in a Q&A box, so we'll make sure we address them. Otherwise, you are going to get an email tomorrow. We'll make sure to include our contact information and Kumio's contact information as well. Feel free to reach out. Would it be okay, Kumio, to reach out to you directly?
Absolutely. Whenever you want, please feel free. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I think my cell phone is there. You can reach out on WhatsApp. The only time I don't answer is when I'm sleeping or in another meeting. So feel free to reach out anytime you want.
Thank you so much. Somebody is asking, is French a prerequisite for the Concordia program?
No, our program is entirely in English. In the case, let's say you want to immigrate to Quebec, then French would then become a requirement for immigration. However, when it comes to work experience, we have a lot of students who find also jobs without speaking French, and we also enroll them in free French classes if they take part in our co-op internship program. And yes, the letters of reference can be sent in French if you are living here in Quebec, or if we accept both languages for references, but we do recommend the rest of your application, if possible, to be in English.
What's the best way to connect with you, Kumio? Would it be email or phone, or would it be go on the website and book a consultation or something like that?
So you can either contact me by email, or you can also go straight into my Calendly. Let me just put that in the chat box. If you go on calendly.com/Kumio, you can book an appointment directly into it, and it's confirmed right away. And we both get like a Zoom invitation or a confirmation on the calendar. So that's really practical. You can do that. Or if you prefer to talk first a little bit informally, add me on WhatsApp, send me a few messages, and then we can figure out another time to talk. I'm literally reachable on every possible means, and now that we're working from home, obviously, we try to be as flexible as possible.
Thanks so much, Kumio. And I want to say from our side as well, if you have any questions about the GMAT, if you'd like to talk about your study plan, feel free to reach out to us. We did talk about several special offers that I mentioned. They are available until midnight tomorrow only, some of these offers. You can find these offers at midmaster.com/offer. And if you have any questions about anything you see there on the website, just reach out to us. We'll be happy to help you. We also know that as much as we want to help you, what we offer is not for everyone. There might be reasons why we can't help you, but I would still like to help you as much as we possibly can. So if it's just a piece of advice, or if it's just a little bit of a guidance, we can absolutely do that, no problem. Please don't hesitate to reach out.
I think we have some participants who might have raised their hands. If you want to put your question in the Q&A box, please feel free to do so, and we'll answer it right away.
If you'd like, I could also unmute you. I know we have a question from Daniel, so if it's easier, I could let you ask your question with a microphone if you'd like, Daniel.
Yep, I see a question in the Q&A. Where can we access the webinars for Concordia? You showed up a little bit earlier. I will send the link to Sergey tonight, so that tomorrow when he sends this follow-up email, you'll have a link where you can sign up for all the webinars. And if you wish to register right away for any reason, you can of course contact me by email, and I'll be happy to manually invite you to the webinar. Just let me know which one you're interested in, and I'll make sure that you're invited to those.
Thank you, Camille. This is great. So I want to leave you, if you have any questions, please put them again here in the Q&A box. But I want to leave you with a little bit of thing to think about. What you are about to decide is your decision, and you're alone. And it's also your life. So take the advice that you hear from anybody, and think about what is best for you, and make the decision that you think is best for you. But make sure that any decision that you make, that is a decision that's consistent with your goals. So if you understand what your goals are, if you understand where you want to take your life, in what direction, then whatever decision you make sure that that decision takes you into that direction and not taking you backwards. There's some short-term things that you can do right now that are going to affect your life in the future for a very long time. Right? I'm speaking with some of the people who are saying, well, I don't know if I want to be a manager, or I want to be a lawyer, or want to be a doctor. And that's a very important decision. So at this time, when I know you, as we're wrapping up this webinar, and as you're probably going to get ready to go to bed, and as you're going to be laying down, and maybe your head's going to touch the pillow, you'll remember, so I went to this webinar, I've learned a few great strategies about the GMAT. I got some great tips on the MBA. I now need to decide, is this for me? Is this the decision that is going to take my life to where I want it to be taken? And if it is, I'd like to encourage you to start taking action, because the longer you wait, on perhaps doing an MBA, the longer you are postponing changing your career to where you want to take it. And perhaps you might be thinking, well, what's a year? What's a 2 years? What's a 3 years? But then life gets in the way. If you don't do it today, then next year, you might not have the opportunity to go to school anymore. You might not have the time to study anymore. If you have the time to study right now, if this is the time when you're sitting at home and you figure that, well, I'm not traveling, I'm not commuting to work, wouldn't this be a good time to put to my GMAT? Then perhaps that is a decision that you need to make right now. I'm not the one to tell you what decision you should make. We're just the ones to show you the way. You have to decide if you want to step there. But if you do decide, I'd like to encourage you to make that decision soon, because there's still time for you to get into the MBA program this year. And from what I've heard from many different schools, I know Kimber wasn't really talking about that today. Maybe you could comment, but we have a good relationship with many schools, and I've heard from every single school I spoke with that the applications this year are up, not down, which was a big surprise to me because, yes, thank you. Because we are thinking, okay, so who wants to go to school right now? We're on the lockdown, but no. If history is a predictor of what's going to happen next, I think next year the applications are going to be even higher. Because as the major economies in the world are heading into recession, many people are going to decide to go back to school. So you could get a head start right now. And hopefully by the time you graduate, on average, recession lasted for about 12 to 18 months. By the time you graduate, the job market should be booming again, and you're going to have a new upgraded skills. And even, again, we talked about skills a lot. Your GMAT class is your first skills building class. I've heard this a lot from the GMAT that said that really people should be treating their GMAT course as the first MBA course, because the skills you're going to learn are the skills that are going to help you do better in school. Do you feel that way as well? Yeah.
Absolutely. I think it's a great preparation for students, for what's going to start in the MBA, and especially if you haven't had a chance to do quantitative things for some time, which a lot of students come from a different background. It's a great way to get back into it. It's a great way to kind of motivate yourself also to get back into studying. Like some students come in with, 7-8 years of work experience and they haven't studied for this entire time. So it's definitely a good gymnastic to get back into, and we encourage everyone to take the process as seriously as possible.
We have a couple of questions from Jaideep. Look at the sign when you're multiplying inequalities. Well, you cannot multiply by 0, so nothing is going to happen. It's just not a valid operation to multiply by 0 an inequality. And then the question was from Laura: will exceptions be made for online GMAT exams to be taken more than once if COVID does not allow us to take it in person anytime soon? That is still open to discussion. As of right now, the online exam will be available only once. Now, the most important thing is what I've mentioned is take a practice exam first. You can go to jmsb.trygmat.com. Let me actually type it here in the chat box.
You want me to unshare my screen so you can reshare yours, Sergey?
Yeah, we can do that if you'd like. Let me share this with you again. You can go on this website that I'm going to show to you right now. You can try the practice test yourself at first. The whiteboard that's used on the GMAT is also something that you could try out first before you actually use this on the day of the test. Do you see my screen right now?
I can see your presentation.
Okay. All right, so here's a practice test that you could take. And as of right now, there are no plans to make it available more than once. So make sure you are prepared well for this test day. This is really a stopgap solution just to address the needs of candidates who need to meet their deadlines for this year. This isn't really designed to be a long-term solution. This said, if the COVID situation does continue for many months, then there will probably be another solution. So most likely the security of the exam is going to be beefed up, so that there's less chance of cheating basically on the exam. That's one of the reasons why it's taken only once, is there's a higher chance of cheating. So there's the security of the exam needs to be probably improved. By the way, please don't try to cheat on the exam. It's most likely going to land you into trouble. But it might be available. That's a long answer to your question. I also want to mention just really quickly about the goal setting workshop that we'll be doing on Thursday. So this is a workshop where we invite a guest speaker. It is somebody whom I known for a long time. This is a person who, when I worked for a big corporation, I remember I was taking some of his classes. He came to teach some of the people in class, and there was like $1,000 a day workshop. And luckily the company paid for it. You know, it's almost half of your MBA, right? That was just a one-day workshop by this person. He wrote multiple books on peak performance, on how your subconscious mind works. So he was teaching us a lot of the time management skills and the different communication skills. So it was just amazing, and we kept in touch for a while. And then finally, and he's usually so busy teaching classes and traveling. So finally, when we are under lockdown, I convinced him, we became friends, I convinced him to come and help our students do well on a test by also recognizing that there's a lot of psychology that's involved in taking a test. So we've already done seminars on how to turn on your brain for learning. We've done a seminar on how you associate different emotions with taking the test and how you can have positive emotions for the test. So there's just some really amazing stuff. Some of our students keep coming back workshop after workshop. So the next two workshops we'll be doing are, there's a workshop on goal setting this Thursday, and the next workshop on time management the following Thursday on May 21st. This is a workshop that's 1 hour long, and it's offered twice a day at 12 noon Eastern time and at 7 p.m. Eastern time. They're only $20 each, $20 Canadian for a workshop. You can bring a friend for free for that $20, and you're welcome to attend twice. So this is going to be a really awesome investment. The kinds of skills you're going to learn. It's a very interactive workshop. It is a fairly small class, so you'll be able to fully participate with video and audio link. That's why we keep it small. That's why we actually charge $20 to make sure you're fully committed, because it's a small investment, and we know that you are going to actually get some real results after this workshop. We'll send you a link and you can register. You can also find it on that website at admitmaster.com/offer. Somebody asked, Sarah asked, do you recommend mastering the whiteboard only once you are ready or close to your score? Well, that would really depend on whether you are getting ready. If you are ready and you feel like you would need to do the online exam, then I would probably give yourself at least a week to practice that whiteboard. And if you feel like you're still far away, then reach out to us. We can talk. Maybe we can help you get a little closer. But once you are getting closer, if the test centers reopen, you don't have to worry anymore. You just use the whiteboard that's provided, or it's a yellow board rather, that's provided to you on a test day. All right. Well, I see the time right now is 9:30, so thanks so much for joining us. So I really feel what you're going through right now. I know I was in the same boat a while ago. It was actually, what, 15, 16 years ago when I did my MBA, and I know not a lot of information was available. There wasn't a Zoom, there wasn't a Google Hangout. Many of the schools didn't even have a website. When I did my MBA, believe it or not, I started my MBA in 2002 and I graduated in 2004. So it was difficult to really find the right information online. And I know right now it's the opposite problem. There's so much information available. It's an information overload. Sometimes when when you talk about questions in class, I know there was a question we were teaching a couple of weeks ago, and we literally pulled out a page from GMAT Club that had 76 pages of discussions on one GMAT problem we did in class. 76 pages of discussions and discussions. And one of our instructors actually went through all 76 pages. Not one comment mentioned the strategy we've taught in class. Right, so there's lots of information. Not all of it is necessarily always a good information. So you really need to decide what is a good information, how am I going to use that information most importantly. And just like the information we shared with you today, there's a lot of information, but you need to decide how you're going to use it. Are you going to say, this was really nice? I've learned a couple of great strategies and this was helpful. Are you going to decide, okay, now I'm going to actually take some action. I'm going to be committed. I'm going to develop a study plan. You have to decide it. We're only here to help. All right, well, now that I don't see any other questions, I believe that we still have quite a few people here on the call. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat box or Q&A box. And if not, I think it's probably time for us to end this workshop. Now, please do remember, there will be some additional workshops. Check out the Concordia JMSB website. There's some amazing seminars. If you really want to understand what the MBA life is going to be like, what can you get out of the MBA? What are some of the things that some other people got out of the MBA? Please feel free to attend these workshops. I know there might even be a chance to sit in a class with a professor, right, Kimmo? Is there a chance to attend the class?
Yes, we're actually putting together an online kind of demo class that you'll be able to attend in the summer. We're just waiting for a few additional details, but there will be the possibility to do that. As you can imagine, with everything that's happening in the world right now, a lot of the things that we'll do are online. So it's a great opportunity to gather as much information as possible in the comfort of your home. So do reach out to us if you're interested in joining a class, or if you want to hear more about our alumni with our online coffee chat series, or if you just want information in general, we're happy to chat and to talk more about MBA admissions in general.
One thing I know, these are very challenging times. Like I mentioned, they're challenging for everyone. We just got our office renovated, right? It's challenging for us. Now we're at home and we can't really use it. So use this time to your maximum advantage. And if you have the time, study right now. And if you do decide to do your MBA, then especially if you've been unfortunately affected by this whole COVID situation, I'm chatting with a few people from my school and who are in the program that I've done before, and I would usually say, "Look, what a great time to be in school." And like, why? What do you mean? Well, I mean, right now, everybody has challenges in the workplace. So you are now in school, you get full support from the school, you get to work on different projects, and you also get to learn how to work in this virtual environment. So what a great time to have this support, because when you're in the workplace, if the company might just say, look, we don't need you for a while, or you just figure things out, or you figure out things at home, but the school is there to help you along the way every single step. So take advantage of it. Things are going to be back to normal, but what is going to be the new normal? Many people maybe will work from home. I know we have some people in this webinar from different parts of the world. This was not possible when we did these seminars in person, but right now you can do it. So there's a silver lining in everything. All right. Well, thanks again. Really appreciate you staying here, and I think we can end the seminar right now.
Thank you so much, everyone, and thank you, Sergey, for inviting us.
Thank you, Camille. Thanks so much for joining us. Thanks, everyone, for joining us tonight, and we'll keep in touch.